Steph Stricklen with GeekWire Studios here at AWS reInvent, and we are here to talk about agentic coding collaboration. I've got a guest who will tell us everything we need to know about it. I'd like to introduce you to him right now. This is Kris Kang, the head of product AI at JetBrains. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Good to be here with you, Steph.
Thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely.
Tell me about JetBrains. I know a lot of folks are going to be familiar, but for the uninitiated, what is JetBrains and what problem is it solving?
So JetBrains is a private company that's been around for about 20 years, and our claim to fame is, if you write code, we are the editor of choice. So about 15 million developers globally, 88 of the Fortune 100 companies trust and use JetBrains to write code.
That sounds at face value clean, but the reality is but hear me out, but the reality is when we're talking about agentic AI and coding agents, helping to accelerate the pace of adoption, security, trust, understanding, and successful deployment is really where we get into the nitty-gritty of what JetBrains does particularly well. Describe for me the challenges that companies are facing when they're thinking about using agentic AI in coding.
Yeah, so here's the challenge. So basically, in the sort of pre-AI era, you had humans that were writing code. And basically, JetBrains provides guarantees to the human that you can't make mistakes that will break your code base. And so in the post-AI era, when people are thinking about hybrid agent-human teams, the question becomes, as I spin up a remote agent to do work for 30 minutes, 1 hour, 4 hours, how do we make sure that those agents don't go off and create a mess, right? And so that's what our customers are asking us. And part of the way that we do that is we're deliberately thinking with our partners, how do we bring in these AI capabilities, but also guardrail the agents so they don't create a mess for your code base, and we make sure that you have a clean, maintainable code base over time, even as you scale your business.
How is it creating those guardrails?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways, right? So I think one of the things you want to do is when you spin up an agent, you want to put it in a sandbox environment. So that way, it's not ruining your version of the code base that the humans are working on. And only when a human has reviewed that code will you feel comfortable bringing that code and pushing it into production. So that's one way. The second way is there's a feature in JetBrains editors called PSI. And for the folks that are in the know, they will know what that is. And so behind the PSI are safety guardrails. So let me give you one example of that. So if I write a function name in my code base, later on in time, I may want to change that function name. But there is a feature behind the PSI that says, hey, wait a second, it might not be safe for you to change the name of that function because it'll break something else in the rest of the code base. So that applies for humans today, but what if we could make that capability available for for agents? And then that's super powerful, right? Because then as a human, when an agent comes back with the work that it's done, I know in my mind, I don't need to check on those things because JetBrains has already checked on those things for me.
And how often did large companies have to learn that lesson the hard way before they had this as a tool, right? You broke code. Things stopped working and you had to triage and figure out how to rebuild what you did. You had to undo it and start over. And this is really a very elegant and fast workaround that can be deployed at scale. Let's talk about scale because that matters. It's one thing for code that is maybe relatively simple in the functions that it will execute versus something as large as global banking or airliners or anything else in the world. Talk to me about at scale.
Yeah, so we see our customers sort of on a spectrum. So if you say one side of the spectrum is startups, and the other side are global banks, right? These are two different animals, if you will. And so for early startups that are using these powerful sort of code gen tools, what they're saying sort of in the early days is, wow, I'm getting so much speed and productivity from these code gen tools, until you hit an inflection point where basically the humans don't understand what's going on in the code base, and they don't know how to fix major problems. And so they might come to us and say, can you help us undo some of this mess? So again, the scaling challenge there is maybe you can use some of these fancy tools for the first 10 million in ARR that you're doing, but as you try to get to 100 million in ARR, maybe those tools won't be the right tools for you. On the other end of the spectrum, if you think about sort of global banks, their challenge is really different, which is to say, they have to be really sure that the code that they're pushing into production is safe, because if they don't, they could bring down the global banking system, right? or if they don't get things right in the banking system or in banking you have many other options to go to different banks, right? And so the question we're having with the leadership in global banks is completely different in the sense of how do we put the safety guardrails in place up front so we never get to a place where we do have to clean it up. So again, JetBrains help us think through this problem and also think through experimentation, because the pace of progress and innovation is so fast. And so these banks want to be able to use all of these different tools, but they want to be able to use it in a comfortable environment. So they use and they know and they trust JetBrains today. Wouldn't it be nice if in that comfortable environment, I could use a wide selection of tools from all of the frontier labs and whoever else is coming on the market. And so we want to make that available to them while also giving them the safety guarantees.
It's interesting because over and over again, what I'm hearing at this AWS reInvent is everything being built on a foundation of trust. And under that umbrella comes governance, comes all of the other sort of sub-factors, but really trust is paramount for so many things that are happening in the agentic AI space. We've talked about global banking. Are there other real-world examples that you are particularly proud of within the JetBrains architecture, problems that you were able to solve for a client? You've really done a great job of illustrating how valuable the tool is.
Yeah, I think the thing we're focused on right now is working with the broader ecosystem to basically make all of the AI tools interop, right? So JetBrains is the place where you, the human or the agent, might write a bit of code, but you've got to do a number of other things as a software developer. For example, you need to document the code that you're writing. You need to update the issue tracker to say that you've closed out a particular ticket. You need to notify people over Messenger or email that you've finished that particular task and it's ready to be picked up by somebody else. So, we've been going to all of the major players within the space and the ecosystem to say, we have a shared customer concern. How can we work together to make this easier for them? Because to get the true unlock of agentic, it can't just work in one environment. It has to work through the entire workflow, and that's what we're working on with our partners today.
Let me ask you finally, what are some of the things that you look forward to most at a conference like AWS reInvent, where everybody's under one roof, so to speak?
Yeah, I think there's two major things that I'm looking for. So number one is I want to hear from customers. So that's kind of our bread and butter. We go to all of our different customers and say, hey, what are you trying out? What's working? What's not working? How can we help, right? So that's number one for me, and it's rare to have this dense of a concentration of our customer base at one event. So it's super to be here at reInvent, and kudos to AWS for setting this up. The second piece is to see kind of what's happening in the vendor space. So especially with AI, I think because there's been so much progress with the large language models, people are scurrying to put it in all kinds of different workflows. And so there are parts of the ecosystem that haven't been built out in terms of the infrastructure, and you see a lot of vendors coming into this space. So it's fascinating to see the amount of innovation that's happening to enable some of these new workflows that customers want. I'll say 3-4 years ago, being at reInvent, I don't think I've seen 50% of these vendors before, right? And so it's kind of exciting to be here and see what the innovation, what kind of innovation people are doing. And again, figuring out who we can partner with.
This really is the place to be for that. Kris, thank you so much for making the time today. I appreciate it. I'm Steph Stricklen, and you're watching GeekWire Studios.